Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The battle for control of the U.S. Congress hangs in the balance 2 days after midterm elections, when predictions of a red wave of Republican victories failed to materialize. 3 undetermined races will determine whether Democrats or Republicans hold power in the Senate. In Arizona, incumbent Democratic Senator astronaut Mark Kelly has a significant lead over Republican Blake Masters, with nearly a third of ballots yet to be counted. In Nevada, Trump-supporting Republican Adam Laxalt is leading incumbent Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto by fewer than 20,000 votes. Most of the 20% of the ballots yet to be counted are mail-in votes from urban areas likely to favor Cortez Masto. In Georgia, newly re-elected Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger announced plans for a December 6 runoff in Georgia's Senate race. Incumbent Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock received about 30,000 more votes than his Republican rival, the former football star Herschel Walker. But Warnock fell just shy of the 50% mark needed to avoid a runoff. In Wisconsin, Lieutenant Governor, Democrat Mandela Barnes, has conceded to incumbent Senator Ron Johnson in a closely fought and watched contest. Senator Johnson is a climate denier who's downplayed the January 6th Capitol riot. Just ahead of the insurrection, he and his staff tried to deliver lists of fake electors to Vice President Mike Pence. Here in New York, Congressmember Sean Patrick Maloney has conceded to Republican State Assembly member Mike Lawler in the race for the newly redrawn 17th Congressional District. Maloney served as chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, making it his responsibility to protect Democrats' majority in the House. We'll talk more about what happened in New York State after headlines. On Wednesday, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy declared his candidacy for its Speaker of the House, even though Republicans significantly underperformed in the midterms, and they have yet to clinch a House majority. McCarthy's main rival for House Speaker, Louisiana Congressmember Steve Scalise, said he would instead run to become Republican Majority Leader. More than 210 Republicans who denied the results of the 2020 election or cast doubt on Joe Biden's presidential victory won races for Congress, governor, Secretary of State, or Attorney General. One top election denier is Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, who's refused to say if she would accept defeat at the polls. With 70% of votes counted, Democrat Katie Hobbs holds a razor-thin lead over Kari Lake. In Michigan, where Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer easily won re-election Tuesday, Democrats have won back full control of the legislature for the first time since 1983. Democrats also won complete control of both legislative chambers and the governor's office in Maryland, Massachusetts, and Minnesota. Nebraska voters have approved a ballot measure to incrementally raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2026. In South Dakota, voters have approved a ballot measure to expand the state's Medicaid program under the Affordable Care Act. The move to bring health insurance to an estimated 45,000 low-income people was opposed by South Dakota Republicans, including Governor Kristi Noem. On Wednesday, President Joe Biden called Election Day a good day for democracy. He also said he intends to announce early next year whether he'll run for a second term as president in 2024.
This is ultimately a family decision. I think everybody wants me to run, but we're going to have discussions about it. And I don't feel any hurry one way or another to make that judgment. Today, tomorrow, whenever, no matter what my predecessor does.
Iran's parliament has voted overwhelmingly in favor of the death penalty for protesters arrested at anti-government demonstrations. The vote follows reports of widespread human rights abuses directed at an estimated 15,000 protesters held in Iranian jails. One female protester in her 20s told the BBC she witnessed physical and psychological torture, saying she could hear the sound of screams as prison guards beat young men in a cell next to hers. Massive protests erupted across Iran in September after the death of a 22-year-old Kurdish woman in police custody. Mahsa Amini had been arrested for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly. On Wednesday, one of Iran's best-known actors, Tarana Aladousti, posted an image of herself on social media without a hijab, in violation of Iranian law, which requires women to cover their hair. She held a sign reading, "Woman, Life, Freedom," in Kurdish. Russian military leaders say they've ordered troops to withdraw from the city of Kherson, the lone regional capital seized by Russia after its invasion in February. On Wednesday, state media broadcast a televised briefing between Russia's defense minister and commander of Russian forces in Ukraine, Sergei Surovikin.
Having comprehensively assessed the situation, I propose we take up defensive positions along the left bank of the Dnipro River. I understand that this is a very difficult decision. At the same time, we will save, most importantly, the lives of our troops and the overall combat effectiveness of the troops.
The loss of Kherson would be the latest in a series of battlefield defeats for Russia as Ukrainian forces continue to claw back territory. But officials in Kyiv cautioned Russia could be trying to lure Ukrainian forces into a trap. In Moscow, Kremlin officials say Russia may withdraw from a Turkish and UN-brokered deal that's allowed for limited exports of fertilizers and grain from Ukraine's Black Sea ports. On Wednesday, a foreign ministry spokesperson suggested Russia may allow the deal to expire November 19th unless Western powers lift sanctions on Russian agricultural exports. Russia's faced international condemnation for exacerbating a global food crisis at a time when the UN warns a record 345 million people face acute food insecurity. Hurricane Nicole made landfall on Florida's east coast early this morning before weakening to a tropical storm. Nicole cut power to at least 82,000 homes and businesses and brought about coastal flooding, strong winds, and storm surges. It's only the fourth ever recorded November hurricane to hit the mainland United States. Global heating is creating far-reaching and worsening crises in every part of the United States, according to a draft of a major upcoming report by the National Climate Assessment. The report finds the U.S. has warmed 68% faster than Earth as a whole over the past half-century. A drastic and urgent reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is the only way to slow down the climate-driven disasters from drought, excessive heat, and extreme weather events. The report also says the worsening climate catastrophe will drive more forced migration, create public health crises, and increase morbidity and mortality, and further threaten biodiversity. The authors note if the world can reach zero or net zero emissions, warming will stop, curbing some of the worst effects of climate change. The U.S. would need to reduce emissions by over 6% every year to meet the Biden administration's goal of net zero by 2050. In news from the UN Climate Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, the group Global Witness found the number of delegates linked to the fossil fuel industry is 25% higher than at last year's COP meeting. That's more than 600 people higher than the combined number of delegates from the 10 countries most impacted by the climate crisis. On Wednesday, activists staged a number of protests at COP27. Youth activist Lucky Abang of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance demanded rich countries pay poor nations for loss and damage caused by climate disasters, like recent floods in Nigeria that killed more than 600 people while displacing over 1 million.
We want world leaders to take this agenda very serious because our future as young people is at stake. We contribute less than 4% to the global greenhouse gas emission, but yet the worst impact of climate change is upon us here in Africa.
British-Egyptian political prisoner Alaa Abdel Fattah is now on the 5th straight day of a complete hunger and water strike as his family and supporters to continue to press for his release and proof that he's still alive. Earlier today, prison officers informed the family medical intervention was taken, though no further details about his condition are known. This is his mother, Professor Leila Swaif, speaking Wednesday from outside the jail where Alaa has been held about 60 miles north of Cairo.
Up until yesterday, I could have believed that he was fine, but he can't be all right after 4 days without any intake. He believes that if this ends in his death, the political price will be high for the regime, and he has already achieved that with the scandal that has happened.
And we have this report, a tweet from Alaa's sister, Mona, who has said that let's see if I can find it. A lawyer has been granted permission to visit Alaa in prison, but she wrote, unbelievable, at the prison they are trying to prevent Khaled Ali from the visit. Meanwhile, a complaint has been filed against Alaa's other sister, Sana Saif, accusing her of conspiring with foreign agencies and, quote, spreading false news. The case has not yet been accepted by the public prosecutor, but it puts Sana at risk of detention while she's in Egypt for COP27. She has already served more than 3 years in an Egyptian prison. In Britain, activists with Just Stop Oil brought parts of the nation's busiest highway to a standstill for a 4th straight day to demand the UK government stop all new oil and gas projects. Protesters climbed on highway sign overpasses, forcing police to shut down traffic. Dozens have been arrested this week, including youth activist Louise Harris.
Over 1,000 people in the UK died in just a few days because of the 40-degree heat, because of the climate crisis, which is fueled by oil, gas, coal, fossil fuels. And our government, they want more. It is an act of murder. And this is an act of self-defense. And we need you to join us in order for this to work, in order for our murderous government to take action and listen. How many more people in Pakistan, in Nigeria have to die before they listen, even in the UK?
And elsewhere in the UK, police arrested a 23-year-old activist for pelting eggs at King Charles and Camilla during a visit to York to protest the destruction wrought by the British monarchy. None of the eggs hit the royal pair, and the young activist continued to protest as police restrained him on the ground.
You know what? I'm with the citizens of Earth, every person who stands against fascism worldwide, all of the victims of police brutality, all the victims of slavery and colonialism and imperialism, every single person who's died, men, women and children. Those eggs are the only justice that they're ever going to see for all of the people who've died so that that man can wear a crown.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Nermeen Sheikh. Hi, Nermeen.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.